But they actually get some really good skills out of this. So I took a guy to the nearest town, a big town, Porto Velho. It's the capital of a Brazilian state, because he had cirrhosis of the liver, however he got that. And I took him to the hospital. First, we went to my house that I had in that city on the missionary compound. He had never been out of the jungle before in his life. So we go there and we have lunch, and I say, now it's time to go to the hospital. So I take him to the hospital, and he says, I don't want to stay here. I said, the doctors say you have to stay here so they can make you feel better. And so then I drive off after I spend a couple of hours with him. And the next morning, about 6 a.m., there's this knocking on my door. So this is 30 miles away. The hospital's 30 miles away. And he's standing there wearing a hospital gown with no underwear or anything on. And I said, how did you find my house? He said, well, I just walked here. I said, but how did you know how to walk here? Well, I saw it yesterday. But all he had to do was get the river where the river is and then mentally compute where we're at. So many experiments have shown that people who don't have right and left, front and back, but use absolute directions like upriver, downriver, to the jungle, away from the jungle, are better at finding their way in new places than we are. You know, I can tell you turn north, and you might know what I'm talking about. But for the average person, I say, turn north. If your life depends on it, you don't know which way to turn.
Right.
But they would know. And so that gives them a better sense of a map of where they're at.
So do they have a word for north?
No, they only use upriver. So the first thing they have to do, the first thing he did when we got him out to town was, where's the river? And I showed him the river, and now he knew where everything was.
Oh.
Because he got the river, and he's got my house. Now he knows where everything is.
30 miles away.
Yeah, 30 miles away.
But doesn't the river wind, and isn't it?
Yes, but they know how rivers work. And they can tell by the direction which way it's flowing. And when he looks at it, he knows which way is upriver and downriver based on the way the water is flowing. And he walked out barefoot with nothing but a hospital gown on, 30 kilometers. And so he left at night, and he got there first thing in the morning.
Wow.
And I said, well, we have to go back. He said, I am not going back. I said, well, the doctor says you'll die if you don't go back. He says, well, I'm going to die then because I'm not going back. He said, I would rather go back and die with my people. And so I took him back, and a few days later, he was dead.
Was he a drinker?
He had been, yeah. There was a time before I helped the Indian agency demarcate their reservation so it could be controlled, that boats came up and down all the time when the Brazil nuts were falling and when there were other jungle products like latex and sorva, which is a product used to make chewing gum and all sorts of other things, and Copaiba, which is used for suntan lotion. So the Brazilian boats would come up and trade for all these things, and they always traded with whiskey because that's sugarcane rum, cachaça, which is the cheapest thing. It's 30 cents a bottle. It was a lot easier to give them that, and the Piraha like it. I told him one time, I said, this stuff's really cheap. It doesn't cost. He said, not for us, it isn't. We don't otherwise get it, and we like it. So, they like to drink.
Did they understand the concept of health, of the consequences of drinking alcohol?
No, because if you're a hunter-gatherer and you're not used to having something in constant supply, you don't have to worry about it. But once it comes in constant supply, then you do have to worry about it. And when these guys keep coming up, leaving this stuff off, then it becomes a serious health problem. Whereas before, it was like I got drunk 6 months ago.
Right.
It's not a big deal.
Right. So once it became commonplace.
Yeah.
And do they adjust their behavior based on people dying of like liver sclerosis? Or?
Not that I've ever seen. They don't. I can tell them till I'm blue in the face that it's the alcohol that's doing this or the tobacco that's doing this. Why would they believe me? They know a lot of guys who have drunk a lot of whiskey and they don't have it, Right. So these couple of guys got it. How do I know that's what caused it? So they don't take my word on faith.
It's very childlike.
It is childlike in the sense that children learn by evidence. And if children don't have evidence for something, and it takes a while for the evidence to start to sink in. You've got to repeat the experiment.
Right, but you would imagine that if they're intelligent people, you could explain this consumption of alcohol. When done infrequently, it's okay, but the everyday consumption of alcohol, because you have an endless supply of it now, is becoming a real problem.
That's a very good point, and I have brought that up with them before, and they say, yeah, we know a lot of Brazilians that drink and they don't get that sickness. So they come right up. It's like I could tell you that the COVID vaccine is really good for you, and you can say, well, I know a lot of people didn't get it and they didn't get COVID either. They weren't vaccinated, they didn't get COVID. So you have to look at the statistics, and even there it's hard.
They just don't seem very concerned with dying anyway.
They're not. They don't want to die right now, but it happens, and they're not worried about it.
What do they think? Do they have a purpose for life? Do they have a thing they worship at all?
No, they don't worship anything. The community is everything. You make a contribution to the community while you're alive, and that's your purpose.
That's it.
That's it. And it doesn't take any thought. You don't need somebody to give a lesson. This is what our purpose is, folks. You just see everybody living, and that's how you learn.
Isn't it odd that that's not the primary way people live, if that makes you so happy? It's interesting because even me, I'm hearing this, I'm like, God, it's so appealing. But part of me is like, I'm not fucking living like that. Nobody wants to live like that. It just seems too crazy, too difficult, too daunting. I don't want to get bit by a snake and have my bones exposed.
Well, I often think this when I talk to people who are extreme ecologists who think we need to not affect the environment. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, go live with the Piraha. You're not going to last 3 days there with them.
Yeah.
Maybe a few days more, but not much. So it is very appealing. And I lived there and enjoyed it. But while I was living there, I had things they didn't have access to. So I can't fairly say that I lived just like them.
You could always leave.
And I can always leave, yeah. I can get in my motorboat and take off.
Yeah.
Or in the worst case, I can get on my two-way radio or satellite phone and call for help.
Did you ever think about just saying, fuck it, stay there forever?
Yeah. In the early years, I did think about it. I thought about not pursuing any kind of graduate degree, not worrying about ever coming back to the U.S. And I was really loving it there. But then I realized my kids wanted a wider experience, and I didn't have the right to deprive them of that.
So you think if you were single, you would have just integrated?
It's very possible. Yeah, that would have been easy to do, although I would have had to become much better at outdoor skills than I ever was. I would not stand up to a Piraha's standards of hunting and fishing, and no woman would have married me because they would have starved to death.
Did you ever get better at those things?
Not really.
No?
I have. For one thing, I like to hunt. I started hunting when I was like 10 years old, pheasant hunting, dove hunting. And so I do enjoy that, but I've never given it the time to become really good at it. Now, if I were abandoned in the jungle, I probably would, but it would take me a long time. These guys are using bows and arrows from the time they're 2 years old. So by the time they get to be teenagers, they're perfect. They are absolutely unmatchless in their skill. And I've done little archery contests before to see how good they are, and it's just astounding. So I would have to spend, many years practicing to get as good as they are. And then in the meantime, I would starve to death because they're not going to feed me.
How are they making their bows?
There's a couple of different kinds of wood that they use, but there's one that is a bright red wood, and it's called piranha food, because it grows near the edge of the river, and it drops flowers off the tree into the river, and the piranhas love to eat those flowers. So if you see a lot of those flowers in the water, probably not good to swim there. But they take a section of the bark, a big section, it might be like 4 inches by 4 inches or 6 inches, and it's just a hard piece, maybe 8 feet long, and they bring that back, and they have a special tool. And it could be wood or bone, or if they have a machete, they use that. And they just start shaping it until finally they get a bow that's probably 2 inches wide. And then they get the bark from a tree, a certain kind of tree, and they give that, and they get it off in strands. And so a man, a brother or a father or a husband will give it to their closest woman relative, and she takes those strands and she makes a bowstring. So the bow represents man and woman working together. A man can make the wood, a woman makes the string. And they get the arrows A man gets the feathers, a man gets the shaft, the woman makes the strings that tie everything on. So she's the glue. And once you get that thing, yeah, there's one right there. This guy. Those
are the arrows, really long.
Yeah,
arrows?
those are the arrows, and these are fishing arrows, so they're much longer. But actually, they're not both fishing arrows. One of them is just a regular arrow, so their arrows are quite long, and that thing is a very powerful bow, and you can see the thickness of the string there. Yeah, that's the bow.
They eat a lot of monkeys?
Yeah, they eat a lot of monkeys.
Isn't that weird?
No, I asked them once. I said, do monkeys look like people? And they say, no, why would you ask that? I said, they look like people to me. And he said, no, they're covered in hair. You're not covered in hair. So I went to the Trans-Amazon Road. I was traveling out all by myself, hitchhiking, and I stayed with this Brazilian, and I said, do you have any cold water? He said, and he had a kerosene refrigerator. And so I went over and I opened it to get his cold water, and at the bottom it looked like there were like 4 dead babies. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what is that? I said, what is this? He said, oh, it's just some monkeys. I skinned them, and a monkey that's been skinned does look a lot more human. But nobody thinks twice about it, I said, are the monkeys more like us, or are they more like dogs? Oh, they're like dogs. They're much more like dogs than they are like us. So they just don't see the problem.
It's just food.
Yeah, it's just food. And they love their favorite part of any animal is the brains.
Oh, yeah.
And one reason the brains are so good is because brains have a lot of saturated fat, and it's a great source of saturated fat. And if you
They
don't
eat
otherwise,
monkey brains?
yeah, they eat monkey brains. So the favorite thing, I was talking to a woman one time, and I was making a sandwich. I had brought in some lunch meat and bread. I had just gotten there. It was my first day there, and so I had a little bit, enough to make a sandwich for that night. And I'm squirting mustard, and when you get to the end of the mustard bottle and you're squeezing, it makes a sound like somebody who's got diarrhea. And she says, what is that bird shit stuff you're eating? And I said, well, it's good. It's mustard. You want to try some? Oh, no. And she said, look at this bird shit. He's eating bird shit. And then I look at her, and she's eating the brains out of a rat. And so she's got this rat head, and she's sucking the brains out. And they're cooked, of course. But she's sucking and I'm thinking, this is a great example for an introductory class in anthropology.
Right.
How different we perceive things. That's great to her. This is great to me, but it grosses the other one out.
That's wild. Mustard's disgusting. Rat brain's great.
Yeah.
And isn't there an issue with eating primate brain tissue? Can you get prion diseases?
Well, there are diseases that they discovered in New Guinea from cannibals who were eating human brains.
Right.
But I'm not aware of any diseases that are passed by eating monkey brains or other kinds of brains. They'll eat any animal's brains.
So the prion diseases that you get are from animals eating the same animal, right? Like mad cow disease is because they serve cows literal brain and neural tissue from other cows.
Right. So I'm not an expert on that, but I do know that I've never seen a case of them getting disease from that. And the superficial reading that I've done on it suggests that humans get it from eating human brains.
Interesting. So they can eat deer brains,